Hello, friends. Well, hello, everybody. I'm LD Madera. You are who you are, and you are special. Welcome to another episode of Improv and Magic. And boy, do we have an amazing episode today. Today's guest is a true superstar of magic, and I'm so excited to share this with you, my friends. My guest today is the one and only Colin Cloud. He's the only magician in history to perform on London's West End, Broadway, and the Las Vegas Strip. Colin specializes in mentalism, and he's so good that he's been described as a real-life Sherlock Holmes. Colin performed as the Deductionist in the touring magic show, The Illusionists. He also was a contestant on Penn Teller Fool Us and competed on Britain's Got Talent in 2012. You may also remember Colin as a semi-finalist on Season 12 of America's Got Talent, and also participated in the very first season of America's Got Talent, The Champions. Colin Cloud has continued to be one of Magic's top performers and is currently preparing to open a brand new show this summer at Harrah's in Las Vegas. Colin was so cool to talk to. We had a great time talking about his beginnings as a performer, what drew him to mentalism specifically, and his process in creating a great show. This was an amazing interview you are sure to enjoy. Get ready, my friends. Here's my guest, Colin Cloud. My friends, this is absolutely exciting because today I am talking to the real-life Sherlock Holmes himself, Mr. Colin Cloud. Hello, Colin. How are you doing today?
I am very well. How are you?
I am absolutely amazing. And are you well?
I am very well, yeah. My opening line that I say, I think, on every stage that I hit is the first question I ask everyone myself. So, yeah, I am very, very well. Thank you for asking.
Where are you talking to us from right now?
I am currently in my quote-unquote home studio here in Las Vegas. I mean, the accent doesn't suggest that. I mean, I'm aware that I sound like I'm from freaking Minnesota or something, but no, I am in Las Vegas.
And you currently have been performing, opening for Shin Lim at the Mirage, right?
Yeah, I mean, opening's an interesting term. I thought that's what it was going to be, but the show very much weaves. I come out, then and do an act, then he does an act, then it's me again, then him. So we alternate pretty much throughout the show. And of course, his wonderful wife, Casey, is now in the show as well, performing her aerial card manipulation act. So it's got a bit more of a variety show feel to it than just like, you know, I grew up in the comedy world where you very much, if you're a headliner, which Shin is, you bring out the support act first, they open, and then it's over to you. It's very different. He very much wanted me to be the narrator, the sort of voice of the show, weaving the story of his life throughout all the magic that's happening.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I want to start by getting to know a lot more about you because we're not here to talk about Shin. Where did you grow up and what was growing up like for you?
So I grew up in a place called Hart Hill in Scotland, which is, if you look at a map, you'll see that there is Glasgow, there's Edinburgh. Those are the two major cities in Scotland. And Hart Hill is like bang in the middle. So there's only an hour, like 60-minute drive between the two of them. So I was 30 minutes from both growing up, but it was very much the countryside, middle of nowhere, lots of farms and pretty quiet, to be honest. I mean, as much as Glasgow and Edinburgh are, you know, in their own right, huge cities, I grew up very much sort of isolated from that. And it was, a very, very chilled, peaceful upbringing.
So what do you mean by chilled and peaceful upbringing?
I mean, a lot of people that I know now, they grew up, you know, in New York or LA, where these places are, you know, they're massive hubs of population, of just constant energy, activity, and, you know, different tech scenes, art scenes. And I just didn't have any of that. It was very much, let's go, you know, play in the forest, build a tree house. And it was very much, you know, sort of what we don't have much of in Vegas or not natural is, you know, like trees and natural sort of organic nature, and I grew up very much surrounded by that, as opposed to it being much busier, which a lot of people that I know now, that's what they had.
So, when you got to visit cities for the first time, like New York or Las Vegas, was it kind of a shock to you because you'd never experienced that sort of lifestyle before?
I mean, definitely. Well, I'll be honest and say, as a young kid, like when you're in the UK growing up, you watch all these movies that are set in these cities that are stunning. Mainly I would say New York, LA, Vegas, sometimes Chicago. But they always just seemed unattainable. Like, I honestly, as a kid, never even thought I would get to visit these places. Never mind go there to perform. And ultimately, Vegas end up. Well, I've lived in New York for a while. I lived in LA for a tiny bit, but now full time Las Vegas resident. Like, I just would never have imagined in a million years that this would be my life. I just never thought that that was possible for someone like me growing up. So to be here now, it's even crazy in this moment. Like, in this moment when as you're doing, forcing me to think about it, like, it just feels like a click of the fingers. And I remember back being that age, and that feeling of never having this. And now here, I'm just like, when did that happen? When did that leap from wanting this to having this happen? And yeah, it really is quite surreal, quite trippy to think about.
So, at what age did you become interested in performing?
Well, that's interesting, because as a kid, I was very shy and reserved and actually hated the idea of performing en masse. And like, unless I know people, even now off stage, I'm pretty reserved and introverted, is the truth. So as a kid, always loved the notion of performing, but never thought I would have the confidence to be able to do it. So I think when I was younger, definitely loved the mentalism stuff. Well, never really magic, but I think I only ever really did it for really close friends that I trusted. I never wanted it to mess up and get embarrassed and have them rip the shit out of me for seeing through the method. So that was always a fear. But it wasn't until I was about 14, 15, I joined the West Lothian Magic Circle. And again, never really had an interest in sleight of hand magic, but it was a place where I could go and talk a little bit about mentalism. And through that, met a guy called Drew McAdam, who is a phenomenal mentalist. Just the charisma this man has is incredible. And I'm so lucky. He very kindly took me under his wing and got me performing in front of real audiences, and I hated it. But and the first few times I did it, I was dreadful. But we filmed it, and we sat down together, and we watched it back, and we made notes, and we improved it. And that really was the sort of initial spark, the catalyst that really helped drive me forward into actually performing. So it's massively in thanks to Drew McAdam for giving me that push and encouraging me to go do that.
I'm very interested in what you just mentioned, the fact that when you perform, you're very alive, but off stage, you're very shy and introverted. And believe it or not, I'm kind of the same way. And my father in law jokes about this all the time. I see you on stage and you're this larger than life guy, but then you're just hanging out with us and we don't hear from you. Do you think that's a common trait that a lot of performers have, that when they hit the stage, they are a totally different person than who they are off stage?
I don't know that I'm a totally different person. I just feel like I allow certain aspects of my personality to excel over others. It's like, like a guitar player's amp. You can, you tune all the different levels. And when I'm on stage, certain levels get ramped up and some get toned down. I will also say that I've seen the people who are amazing performers, but they're extroverts. They come off stage and they still feel the need to perform, which I've got nothing against, but they hit a point where either that night or at some point in their life, it's like they hit a wall and they experience burnout. And, I don't wish that on anyone, but I've seen it happen. And I never want that to happen to me, I suppose. So I'm almost glad that this is my personality, that when I'm on stage, I am the best performer I can possibly be. And I mean, my goal, this is not to sound arrogant, but my goal is to be the best performer, mentalist, comedian in the world, right? Because if I don't have that mindset, why would you aim to be 125th? Aim to be first, and set your level as high as you can, and you get close to it rather than setting it low and maybe getting close to it when it's lower. But that is the goal. But when I'm off stage, I don't have any desire to be the performer, to constantly be quote unquote showing off. And unless I'm really asked a lot, I mean, I suppose it's kind of like that Malini type thinking, right? Unless I'm asked at least three times, I won't do anything for people, because I would rather off stage connect with people through being an authentic human being than needing to hide behind the tricks. And yeah, that's just how I feel about it. I'm not saying it's the right way, it's just my way. And, I wish everyone the best with their own personal choices on that.
So when you were growing up, were you certain that magic and mentalism was the thing you wanted to do, or did you have any other aspirations in show business that you wanted to try?
Yeah, again, even when I was young, I mean, so a few things, sidestep for a second. I went to university quite young. I was 15 when I got accepted. So around the same age I met Drew McAdam. I started at 16 to study forensic investigation. I ended up in my fourth year specializing in criminal profiling. And I really thought I was going to go into that world of, applying to join the police and, apply those skills and become the real life Sherlock Holmes in that regard. And I really thought that was going to be my life, becoming a detective or forensic scientist with the police. Really believed that was going to be my path. But when I was at university, I got really into comedy. As a kid, I always loved comedy more than magic. In the UK, we had the Paul Daniels Magic Show, which I would always record and play back and try and figure out the tricks. But I was more interested in comedy. And every Friday night in the UK, the BBC and Channel 4, there were only four channels back then, but they would show different comedy specials. Like BBC had the Fast Show, Harry Enfield and Chums, a Scottish show called Chewing the Fat, and Channel 4 had like Father Ted, and just absorbing all this comedy and calculating why is that funny and how have they delivered it and why those words and why that pause and why those facial expressions. And I really wanted to analyze all of that. So I was more into comedy, and I realized comedians are really, they're the best Sherlock Holmes, right? Because they are on stage observing everyone. And under public speaking, of course, is the number one fear amongst human beings. And the fact that they put themselves through that, and even in that scenario that is so high stress, they're able to pick up on all these little things. And I thought, I want to learn that skill. And I read books. I read Jimmy Carr's book, The Naked Jape. And I was like, the only way to really do this is to get up there and try it. So I actually got more into the comedy at university, as well as, Drew was helping with the mentalism, but I just loved comedy. I would say 1% more than the mentalism. But that led to me becoming pretty, I hope a little bit at least, proficient with public speaking and comedy, because at the end of university, I got headhunted by a company called Tree of Knowledge, which is a motivation and engagement training organization in the UK. It's not religious. It's all based in science, psychology. I'm working with teenagers, young adults, and now businesses to develop skills around mindset and motivation. And they headhunted me to come and work in high schools with teenagers who were about to sit exams. So I was doing 3-4 hour long workshops with them, where it was just really me talking, no tricks to hide behind. Yeah, I did always open with one routine, which on occasion I still perform to this day. But it was basically me and them for 4 hours talking. And I learned very quickly that if you're going to hold someone's attention for 4 hours, you need to be funny. You need to find ways to engage them, connect with them. And that was a massive learning for me. And I for a while thought I was going to stay in that world of just public speaking. But I remember we were on Dragon's Den, which is the UK equivalent of Shark Tank. And the next day, the phones would not stop ringing with companies who wanted to hire us. So I moved from speaking in schools to speaking with companies all around Europe. And part of the end of that speech I would give at the end to sum everything up, I would say, look, if you don't enjoy your job, if you dread waking up in the morning, dread the drive here, don't like the people you work with, I've got a piece of groundbreaking advice for you. Leave everyone alone and go find what you do love. And I realized there and then I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because I'm telling you this, and actually I remember one day just feeling this cold sweat, the shivers, the hairs on my neck standing up, because I realized I'm telling you that, and I'm a hypocrite, because I want to now go be performing, doing all the mentalism stuff. Because through my time at Tree of Knowledge, as I got better as a speaker, I actually performed more and more, and realized I just had a real now passion for sharing that with an audience on stage. And there were two other owners of the company, myself. Well, four of us led a management buyout. We bought the company, Alan Doogie, myself, and then the guy who was the other head speaker there, Gavin Oates, who I performed in a comedy sketch trio with as well. undoubtedly the funniest person alive. His timing, his awareness of people, situations, and the way he is able to just make everyone relax, laugh. Like, the learning I got from him was incredible. So as much as Drew was helping with the mentalism, hands down, Gavin Oates as a comedian was helping me learn how to take all that knowledge I had and channel it and be funny and connect with people. So lucky that I met those people at those moments to learn those skills to help really then set me apart as I hope set me apart as a performer, but really believed that the speaking world was where I was going to end up, not ever just performing.
You know, it's funny, you mentioned how you studied forensic psychology, and here I am thinking, I wonder if he's been able to use that somehow.
It's fun. Do you know, as much as we know mentalism, it's the magic trick side of, well, in magic, it's the psychological mind reading side, but they're all magic tricks. I would say that the genuine profiling does really help me know who to pick for what routine, because my goal is always to make people look as good as they can. And also then learning how to calibrate my personality to best fit them to ensure they will do the things that I want them to do when I want them to do them, right? So that awareness, knowledge, skill set has paid dividends in relation to actually dealing with real human beings live on stage. That's where it's really come in handy. So when people are like, is the mind reading real? I'm like, yes and no. Or is the profiling, do you use it? Yes and no. I do, but not in the way you think I'm doing it. But it's definitely been incredibly insightful and ultimately beneficial to enhancing the quality of my performances, just because of what I can get people to do and how I can then respond to that with comedy.
So here's, of course, the big question. Why mentalism? What is it about mentalism that has really appealed to you to the point where you've committed to it full time?
So I think the reason I love it so much is that it doesn't, I think with magic, it can often feel like you're hiding behind a prop. And it's almost a barrier between you and the audience. Whereas with comedy, it's you speaking to people or at people, but you're just connecting with words. And I love that it's just you and them. And I think with mentalism, more often than not, it feels like, and always is, but it feels like it's the same thing. It just feels like it's you connecting with another human being. There's nothing to hide behind that they're aware of. And you're able to then just create that real visceral experience that feels like what it should be. I think, and this is not me dissing it or shitting on it, but when you bring out a weird looking magic prop and it does the magic, or if you're a stage illusionist, which, I going to see Copperfield's show, when that car appears, I think it's the best live illusion on the planet. But I also think, like, yeah, but there must be something making that happen. But when it's just you and people, there's nothing, right? So it just becomes, I think, when I say more real, I'm not out to convince anyone of my abilities, and I don't make any claims. I don't even say this is psychology. I don't say it's, I maybe allude to it to make it, seem like they can latch on to maybe what's happening, but I don't make any claims. My only claim or my only desire is to be as entertaining as possible. That's the only thing that I try and manifest. But yeah, I just think with magic, even a deck of playing cards, I just feel like as soon as you spread the cards, you're literally making a barrier. You're drawing a line in midair between you and them. And I wanted to always try and rid myself of that as much as possible in the magic that I chose to share with people.
What's so great about watching you perform is that we always see you upping the ante every single time. And I remember watching a clip where you did this piece where you actually had people write things down while they were traveling on the Fort Bridge, and you are kilometers away from them, and yet you were able to exactly deduce what exactly they wrote. How important is it for you to heighten the impossibility factor of the pieces that you do?
So there's two things to always bear in mind. One is, how impossible can it be before it becomes too unbelievable in the realm of Sherlock Holmes? And secondly, it's what is different to what I've already done on TV before. So things like what you're referencing, that was a show for the BBC. That was like a special that we did. things like that, things like an America's Got Talent appearance. I know that for those things, I want to take skills, methods, ideas, jokes, stories that I have and embellish them so that I know that what I'm doing is going to work, but I want to embellish it to make it feel special for that one-off event. Like when I do, like at the moment, I'm promoting my new show a lot, and on TV shows and interviews, if they ask to see something, which they always do, I've kind of got like a little repertoire of things that I can do very quickly that will give them the feeling of the close-up excitement of having seen me do something for just them. I don't feel like I need to write new and impossible things for those people. With love and respect, I can kind of stick to the things that I know work. But with regards to the impossibility, I mean, it's the same as writing a brand new Edinburgh show or a brand new Las Vegas show. It's always, how can I make it as different to what I've done before whilst keeping it in the realm? I think if you try and always better what you've done before, you're setting a massive psychological limitation on yourself where that pressure of making it better, how do you calibrate that? I learned early on, don't try and make it better. Try and make it as different as you can. And then by starting in a completely different place, you give yourself a real fighting chance to create something new. Then you take that new thing and you make it as amazing as it can possibly be. And that's what happened with the Fort Bridge example. And, on the day we were like, it's good. It's cool that you can then reveal what everyone wrote or what they drew. But what's the kicker? And I think I was like, what if I realize in the moment, actually, if I switch you two around and you two move, and then the first letter spells Fourth Bridge, it seems like a very happy, lucky coincidence. But yeah, it's always just finding these, like a joke. You're trying to tell an amazing joke, and then having that little tag at the end that just bumps it one step forward again.
One thing I tend to notice as I've watched a lot of your performances is you tend to keep your overall personality quite versatile. I've seen you do some pieces where you're very sincere and serious, and then I've seen other pieces you do where you're being almost like a comedian. How do you manage to keep yourself versatile for the different shows that you do?
I think tonally, it depends on what the effect is, right, and how important is my personality be. Like if I'm going to use suggestion and hypnotism, I need to be a little bit more authoritative. Whereas if I want people to be relaxed and outgoing, I want the comedy to come through so that it sets that precedent for them. Um, at the moment, I'm actually a finalist on this year's Britain's Got Talent again as well, because they came to myself and my friend Ben Hart, he's a phenomenal artist, magician, and one of the few people I would call a genius in the world of magic. And they know that Ben and I have both written for the show. I've written for AGT a lot. He's written for BGT. They came to us and said, can you guys create like an Avengers of Magic where there's 8 magicians together on stage? And Ben and I were both like, 8 is never going to work. The time they give you, the egos that you're dealing with, the stage time, it's never going to happen. And they were like, okay, but can't be 8. How many? And Ben and I were like, 2, just me and Ben. And then they were like, no, what about 5? Then we were like 3. And then they were like 4. And we're like, cool, let's go with 4. But for that piece, it had to have a theme and a tone. And I'll be honest and say that I kind of let Ben lead the direction of the tone of that. So when you see it, it definitely feels a little bit more Ben Hart intense, which is for Ben beautiful and amazing, than a normal Colin Cloud piece would be. But there had to be compromises made within that so that it would fit for everyone. And when you see the other performer there, she is also a little more mysterious and intense. And I knew that if I was going to be comedy Colin there, it was going to jar and the full thing just wouldn't have felt right. So I am also willing. I take what I do seriously. I don't take myself seriously. So I am very willing to accommodate when it is required to best fit and suit the magic so that experience overall is as amazing as it can be for people. And I think that by having that range of being able to adapt is what has helped me constantly evolve and appeal to so many different people, audiences, shows, and situations.
Well, you're the first magician I've had the pleasure of talking to who competed on America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent. I'm curious about how that process was because you're in a position now where you're competing week to week and have to come up with something new and better each time that'll make the judges keep you going. So I'm curious, what was that experience like for you being on both America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent?
So years ago, when I very like first outing on TV, I think, or my second outing, I think I did Foolers first, and then BGT that summer. I wasn't ready, and I shouldn't have done it, but I was starting to do sketch comedy, and I thought, let's do this thing and sell tickets. And I got 4 yeses, but it didn't lead anywhere, and that was 12 years ago. Then I was touring with the Illusionists, and long story short, they came to see the show in Toronto and approached me after the show and said, "Hey, we want you to compete." And I said, "Thank you, but I've done that and not interested," because I felt like I'd done BGT, didn't go anywhere. And the people that were on these shows, AGT and BGT, really the prize for them was they ended up in the Illusionist. And I'm like, I'm already in the Illusionist now. I've done it the long way, the hard way. I've done the Edinburgh shows year after year, built a following, got the reviews, moved up to the 1,000-seater venues. I've already, not to be arrogant, but I've worked my ass off and I've achieved the things that your show offers. Ultimately, beyond if you win potentially the $1 million prize. So really, it wasn't money wasn't appealing enough to do it. So I said no, thank you. Then they contacted Simon Painter, who owns the Illusionist, and he said, "Oh, so you're doing AGT this year?" And I went, "Oh no," they asked, and I said no, and he went, "No, you're doing AGT this year." And it felt like your boss telling you that you're working on Sunday, and you're like, "But I've got plans Sunday," and they're like, "No, you're working Sunday." I was like, "Oh shit, right, okay." And I was on tour with Kevin James, and he'll tell you himself, his first time on the show did not have a great experience. At that time, they were still trying to expose magic, parody it, and Kevin James does some of the best illusions on the planet. And if you're going to shit on Kevin James, other magicians are going to see that and be deterred from being on the show. So they realized that they need to help magicians look good on the show. And I hadn't realized that yet. But where I'm going with this, initially I pitched an idea and they said no. Then another idea, they said no. And I just kept pitching stuff. And it was just like, oh my God, this is like everything Kevin James said. And I was on the Illusionist tour for maybe 6 months at this point, homesick, missing my cats. And I just said, fine, get me a kitten. And then they went, oh, we can do that. And I'm like, oh, shit, what do I do with a kitten? Then I had to think about what do I do and how do I manipulate those methods to. And that was my first appearance with the little white kitten, Oscar. But after that, we basically sat down. I went for a meeting with them in LA. They flew me in for a day to sit down with them and show them what I'd planned for each round. And just knowing how TV works, I knew that if I went in there with a pitch deck and a sort of treatment ready to go, showing them with visuals and stuff, they were just going to really get behind me. And thankfully, all that time and effort making that really helped. I went in, I showed them each round, and they were all for it. Now, what I will say is that the producers were very on my side. On the day of my fourth appearance, the solving the murder of Simon Cowell, they literally phoned me that morning. This is not an exaggeration. Like, they phoned me that morning and said, "Hey, we know that you've rehearsed it, but we want you to put Mel B into the act somehow." And I'm like, "But that's going to make it too long. We've not practiced that. I'm going to have to rescript it." And they went, "Oh yeah, that's fine. You can have more time. There was rivalry in the media between Mel and Simon at that point, and we want Mel to be the one to stab Simon." And I'm like, that changes a lot without you realizing it. And I think that was my downfall, is that performance was too long. An AGT audience have the mindset of a YouTube audience where it needs to be fast, understandable, slick, tell a very clear story. And at that routine then didn't. And I think it kind of derailed the momentum that I'd built up. So when I went on for my fourth appearance, I kind of already knew and felt this was my last one. So I just gave it everything I had to at least go out on a bang. But because the producers knew that I had that fifth performance ready, when they were then filming AGT Champions, they then phoned me up and said, "Hey, can you come and do that David Hasselhoff routine now?" So at least it kept me there. Now, I hate doing TV. Like, I don't enjoy it. I love doing live shows. The only reason I do TV is to sell tickets, to raise your profile, to get people to come and see your live show. That is the only reason I do TV stuff. And I make the most of it for the people that are there in the audience, but I don't enjoy it as much as being on stage, doing the stuff that I do day in, day out, which I know is polished, refined, and going to tell a story over, 75 minutes. But yeah, I think in the end had a great experience, and thankfully now have that relationship with them where it is great. And now working on BGT again this summer with Ben, with Russ Stevens. it's amazing to just understand how their minds work on stuff as well, and get an insight into, with it being four magicians, there are some illusions that we're doing and seeing behind the scenes of that. It's amazing. And, even today, getting phone calls from producers changing things on us last minute. Well, not last minute. It could be worse. It could be the day off again, where I don't fly out there again for another I think it's 2 or 3 weeks. On Monday I fly back there and film the next round. But phoning me and saying, "Oh, that thing we said you could do, now you can. That thing you could have, now you can. And the way you were going to do it, we want it to be different." And it's like, oh man. So it's a good creative exercise, or at least it would be when you're not also trying to write and learn a brand new Edinburgh show, and also relearn a best of show that's going to be your own Las Vegas headlining residency show. So it's a lot to juggle, but I've got great people around me who are helping with all of this. And ultimately, what a great position to be in. How lucky I am to have all these problems. Because any one of these would have been a dream for me as a kid growing up. And the fact that I've now got it all happening at once is pretty incredible.
This is sort of a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. What was it like working with David Hasselhoff?
He was actually a joy. I had to have a few phone calls with him before, and he was all for it. And then on the day, went down, had coffee with him, and just talked to him through what I needed him to do. But ultimately, everyone, it's just people, right? I think when I was a kid, I used to get really starstruck. There are very few people now who I could be starstruck by, and that's not to be disrespectful. But I've just learned that if you come at these people and treat them as human beings, you get a way better interaction with them than just, "Hey, can I get a selfie?" If you can speak to them like real people, like you can share in that moment. And, even when we did the murder of Simon Cowell, he had to come and sit on that bench with me for 5 minutes before we started filming and just chatted. I'm just like, "Yeah, how's it going? How are you?" And we just chatted like real human beings, and ultimately that's what these people are. And the fact that, you can appreciate what someone is known for and have that insight as well, and sharing that. It's just, yeah, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to meet as many people as I have, but chat to them like real human beings. And it's just, yeah, it's very cool to, like in the case of David Hasselhoff, just, yeah, I grew up watching him on Baywatch on a Saturday night in the UK, and here you are wearing a mask of my face. What the hell is happening? But incredible, utterly incredible. And I don't take any of it again for granted. Like, there are real moments where you pinch yourself, even now, and I'm like, wait, I got David Hasselhoff to wear a mask of my face? Like, I've never said those words till right now. That's the first time I've said that, and it's hilariously, gloriously ridiculous. But yeah, what a journey.
Yeah, I've had the same experience doing this podcast because I've had a chance to talk to a lot of people, most of whom I'm big fans of. And like, even before talking to you, I'm sitting here 5 minutes before, like, oh goodness, I'm going to get to talk to Colin Cloud. But I love that as soon as their video shows up and I see them, I'm like, oh, this is a friend I get to talk to. And all of those nerves just kind of goes away. So I love what you're saying. And it could be easy for a lot of us to think of these people as celebrities and not really human beings. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I treat everyone with respect, though. I remember doing the Royal Variety performance, and I remember I would hope people that were there would agree, I treated the crew who were miking me up the same way I treated Prince William, when he shook my hand and thanked me for being there. Every everyone's equal. No one's above anyone else. You might just have a little bit more information about some people, but everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's got an amazing story. And ultimately, I try my best to respect and value everyone. And like, rule number one that I remember in any situation, the advice, people are always like, what's the main piece of advice for excelling in this world of entertainment? And I think rule one is, don't be a dick, because it is a small world. And if you're a dick, that news travels fast. People don't want to work with you. And just, I remind myself of that. When I think I'm having a bad day and something else is happening in my personal life, it's like, take a deep breath. This is a new situation. These people are all here to help you to do the thing that you love most in the world, to share that with people who are here to experience that. Don't be a dick. And I just think it helps sometimes reset the mood psychologically, right? And just helps you stay grounded, have no ego, and yeah, really connect with as many people as you can, and positively impact as many people as you can when you are performing in any given situation.
So I'm curious how you feel about this. My own personal opinion about mentalism, I love it. I think it's wonderful. But I think nowadays it's very difficult to perform on television because of the fact that now people know a lot more and people know about things about how TV gets edited and spliced up and how people use plants in the audience. And obviously, you do none of that. The mentalism you do is very good and authentic. But do you agree that it could be more difficult now to do mentalism on TV because the audience tends to know a lot more now than they did before?
Explain. I don't think they know a lot more. All you've said, respectfully, all you've said there is they think plants. What else do you? I mean, before I give you a decent answer, what else do you think they know?
I could be totally wrong. I will admit to that. But I think a lot of people know about editing. They may not know exactly how things are edited, but I think sometimes people think something gets cut out or maybe something is said beforehand to kind of prearrange things. I think the audience has maybe not an in-depth knowledge of that type of thing. And again, that's nothing that you do. You
Mhm.
keep it genuine and authentic. But do you think that it's harder to fool audiences on television through mentalism because of those
Okay.
things?
So I think the two things audience members think. I wanted to fully understand your perspective in case you had an insight and a take on this that I hadn't considered. I think people that watch me on a show will assume plants, as you said, or research of those people. That's what I think they think. Right? We somehow before the show managed to research them, and so it's then my job to make it seem as fair, random, and in the moment authentic as I possibly can, so that it seems like I don't know who's going to get picked. We're making it fair. And had you, the person at home, been here now, this would still have worked with you. I don't know that it's more difficult to fool them because I still think there's no way they can kind of know. I don't also try to never just say your birthday's this and you live at this address, because it would feel like, well, you could have researched that, or they've got that information on the way in when your driving license gets scanned to be an audience member. I always try and make it things that are more impossible to just know. I always say, I try and when it's edited, always make sure they leave in. I say, look, we've never spoken before. You've got no idea what's happening, and you're thinking of this for the first time right now. Like stuff like that, I think helps. Ultimately, there are going to be people who watch the show who just assume, though, nah, they're in on it. They're plants. Even people that come to see me live, when I read the reviews, they say it was all plants. Now, I throw around a teddy to pick people at random. Like, I don't know how much more random I can make it. And I'm also on the clock, so I can't just say, we're going to throw the teddy 10 times. That way, most of you will have interacted with it and you will know whoever's, it's just, I don't have time for that. So there is a compromise where some people are going to think I'm psychic, which I make it clear I'm not. Some people are going to think it's plants, which I try and make it clear it's not. I learned a long time ago to just not give a shit about any of that stuff and just make it as entertaining as I possibly can. If I focus on making it entertaining, the methods, people like if people leave and the only thing they're thinking is, how did he do that? Then I must have been a pretty boring performer that's the only thing that was on their mind. Like I want them talking to me about that moment where she did that. That was hilarious, and the way that she reacted there, that was I want them focusing on that stuff. And I actually think mentalism historically has been pretty procedural, long drawn, drawn out, boring. Now, in the days of like Maurice Vogel, who I think is probably the greatest mentalist of all time, until Darren Brown, Andy Nyman, Andrew O'Connor, and Anthony Owen come along and modernize mentalism. Back then, Maurice Vogel time, there was no YouTube, there was no TikTok scrolling for 15 seconds. People had longer attention spans because they didn't know any different. Um, and I think back that if that mentalism was being done today, and if people are doing that mentalism today, I think it takes a compelling performer to pull that off. And I was performing, for years in up to 5,000 seater, maybe 8,000 seater, I think was the biggest stadiums with the Illusionists. Like I needed to capture that entire audience quickly and hold them. And I had to then really think about the way I present the mentalism that I do, and really, again, add in the comedy to that. So I really hope that a combination of those things really help everyone feel involved. Oh, that's the other thing. It's like I try and find a moment of using everyone in some way. So everyone do this so that it feels like everyone was involved. Even people at home watching at home can still feel, part of the experience. But yeah, ultimately, magic on TV is always going to be hard because unless you're there, I think it's Michael Weber probably who said this great quote. It's like watching a cooking show is very different to being at the restaurant eating the food. Like you watch a cooking show and it's like you can look at the food and go, that looks great. But unless you're there actually tasting it, it's a different experience. And I think magic is the exact same. And that's why I think magic on TV, then, much the same way as tasting the food goes, it comes down to the reaction of that person. Because the reaction of those people being authentic and amazed and blown away, that is the social proof that the audience at home needs that you are actually as good at what you do as you say. And that can't be acted, right? If you're really good at it, it's people know the difference, and it comes down to that and learning how to elicit those moments from people. And that is what I'm always more focused on, are those moments of genuine awe, excitement, and hilarity, or feeling moved. That's what I'm more focused on than worrying about really trying to fool people, which needs to happen at a foundational level anyway, right? The magic needs to be fooling, otherwise game over. But my focus is always after that is on everything else to paint a much bigger picture than just what brush is he using.
I recently had a conversation with Dan Harlan, and we had a great conversation about focusing not just on what the audience sees, but what the audience feels. And as I listen to you talk, it sounds like that's also a very big, important thing for you as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. For every reason I've just given. Yeah, and I for the most part more I try and remind myself people are here to escape. Maybe they traveled far, they got a babysitter, whatever, but they're here to escape. And that's why I do focus more on the comedy, the upbeat, the energetic. That's what I go for, rather than, when I'm in Edinburgh, I have more carte blanche to kind of make it more of a journey and challenge the way that they think. But in Vegas, certainly it's more just come out, be amazing, and leave everyone on a real high in a way that they've never felt it before.
So you've had the good fortune to perform in London's West End, as well as, of course, Las Vegas and on Broadway, which is absolutely incredible. And I believe you're the only mentalism in the world to have ever been able to perform in those three areas. I'm curious, were there any differences that you noticed performing in those three areas?
Yeah. So the West End, they're very reserved, which is typical British mindset. Broadway, it was I think Americans, you're just better at sharing your emotions and you're more open, you're more confident, comfortable. British people are not. So on Broadway, or let me go to Vegas first. Vegas, it's high energy, excitement, people usually a little bit tipsy. So it's super energetic. And then Broadway's somewhere in the middle where it has the expectation factor of the West End, where people, okay, you're on Broadway, impress me, but also people that are excited to be there because, again, you're American and you want to be outgoing and vocal. So I feel like it's a real spectrum, with West End being the toughest to perform in. Vegas, not that it's the easiest because people are drunk, so you have to manage them in a different way. And then Broadway's somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. I'm very much generalizing. 1,000 people audiences on that spectrum, but for the most part, that is the way I kind of felt and think about it. And they're all amazing and glorious in their own weird and wonderful ways.
Do you have a personal preference of which one you enjoyed the most, or is it all good to you?
Yeah, I think it's all good. I mean, I actually, bizarrely, I love turning up at corporate events. It's funny. I was having lunch with Matt Franco recently, and we're talking about like loving the theater show, and I went, yeah, but I love turning up at a corporate event, and I don't think he'll mind me saying, but he's like, dude, no, that's the opposite of what I want, and I love walking into a room cold, unknown. These people like, wait, who's this guy with what's that on his head? And what is happening here? And over like 30 or 40 minutes, like taking that room who have been watching corporate PowerPoint number presentations all day, coming in last minute as a surprise and like shaking up that room, it's electric. Like I think that's the hardest, and I think it's the most rewarding, right? The other places, usually they're there to see you, so there's already a bit of a buy-in. But convincing an audience that you're worthy of their time and attention, like I never want to lose that muscle. And even when people are there to see me, in Vegas or Edinburgh, the other shows, the West End, it was the Illusionists, so you were there as part of an ensemble. So to an extent, they're there to see you. But yeah, I never want to lose. I always hit the stage with the same corporate energy of earning it. Like I go at the audience to deserve their time and energy and attention. And then it becomes reciprocated and it makes my life way easier. That's why I spoke about burnout earlier. I never have that because I feel like I learn how to reciprocate their energy. And before I know it, I'm just holding up a mirror and reflecting back to them what they're giving me. And yeah, I love that I've found a way to orchestrate that and almost just play the part of the conductor in any situation that I'm in. And I'm able to adapt depending on what the situation requires, I think fairly quickly and proficiently to best maintain that audience and have them, react in ways that I want them to.
So, what is your process in general in creating the pieces that you create for your show?
So again, when I'm writing a brand new show, I think about what is totally different to what I've done in the past. And then I work out what story I want to tell. And then I think what types of routines would best tell that story. That's where I start from. And from there, I kind of just break it down. Like I have two massive blackboards over on this wall. One is my new Edinburgh show. The other is my Vegas show. And I literally, I can see from the top down, it starts with what story points I wanted to tell. And then it's got a little arrow. And then I've got the routine that I've now decided that I'm going to do to best tell that story. And that's kind of where I start now. I will say that's how I did Edinburgh was the story. With the Vegas show, which is a different blackboard over here, I did it the other way. I went, what are my favorite tricks that I've done in my 10 different 1 hour shows? And I wrote those down. And then I thought about how many of them are similar. And out of the ones that are similar, which is my favorite. So I would score some out. And then from what was left, I thought, what stage pictures or what's strongest, obviously, as well. What gets the biggest reaction. So, one of those at the beginning and then more of those near the end. And thankfully, after 10 1 hour shows, the stuff all gets good reactions. 5-star reviews pretty much across the board from people that review it. I am my own worst critic. I'm a massive overthinker with imposter syndrome, so I'm never going to be happy. But I trust other people. And I basically wrote down the dream effects of what I would want to do in the show for Vegas and decided, yeah, that is the best order. The problem I have with the Vegas show right now is that we need it to be 75 minutes. And I'm looking at the time. I've got everything timed out because I have it all on video. And it's currently running at 85 minutes. And I know that when I get comfortable in that room, I'll naturally add 5 minutes of comedy. So it's going to be 90 minutes. So the problem I'm now facing with Vegas is what routine do I kill from that show, and that's where I'm at, which I hate. With Edinburgh, most of it has never been done before, so I know that those first 3 preview shows are going to be pretty crucial learnings. I have this habit with Edinburgh where I always think I've written a 1 hour show, and night one is always, again, 90 minutes long because I ad-lib, because when people are there, when you're practicing, you can only partially account for how they're going to respond. So I gave myself 10 minutes extra this year. Usually a fringe show is 60 minutes. I managed to negotiate 70. The problem is I'm looking at the board for Edinburgh and it's already sitting at 80. So I know it's going to be like at least 90. So again, same problem, too much material. And then it comes down to what do I kill that still tells the story for Edinburgh? And what do I kill in Vegas that still keeps the energy up and makes everything feel different without too many similar stage pictures? Or if people, like, I love Penn and Teller's show where you can take a Polaroid of each routine and it would be different. And I love that way of thinking. So it's the same with everything I do, is how can I make sure that these all feel very, very different if people did take photos of each piece. And I use all of that type of thinking to calibrate and ultimately navigate through what stays and sadly what ends up having to go.
Well, it's very exciting to see you moving on to your new show in Vegas and your new show in Edinburgh. What can we expect to see from those two shows?
So the Edinburgh show is called Consequences. And last year I did something a little different. I did 5 nights with a show. It was later at night. It was 9:15, so I called it After Dark. People assumed the show was called After Dark because it was later at night. The show was actually called After Dark because it was a show that was exploring the journey of my own mental health over the past 4 or 5 years, which, until COVID hit, I'd never really ventured into. And being from the UK, therapy is not really a big thing there. And I had a number of different things happen to me during COVID that just really shook up my mental health in a way that I'd never experienced before. And having come from the world of motivation and mindset training, I just arrogantly assumed that I was never going to be victim to that. And I think as a result, it hit me even harder than it maybe could have had I been personally better prepared. Um, the sort of twist in that show is that maybe this needs to come with a spoiler, or not a spoiler alert, rather a trigger warning at this point, is that it builds up to like essentially the darkest night of my life where, I thought I was going to end everything. And I tell this story of how it got there. And you then play back the show and you realize everything I've done has a very different meaning to what you thought it had. And the writing of that show was very much then designed to get people to think on the way out about everything that I went through and how that impacted to get to that moment. And it ended with me then sharing what ultimately stopped me, taking things too far, thankfully still being here, and what I now know I can do should I ever feel myself being in that way again. And I really wanted to share that with people because especially in the UK, it's not something that's massively spoken about. And the impact that show had was incredible. Usually after a show, I get messages from people saying you were hilarious, that was amazing. This time, people were messaging me on social media, sharing their stories or saying thank you because they've been feeling this but felt they couldn't really share it. And I think opening that conversation up for people to be able to have and empower those people was just, I think, unexpected. Again, there's a responsibility when you're doing a show that people have certain expectations. So the show was amazing. It was hilarious. But I always feel like, again, I have that allowance with an audience where they know I'm going to do something that's unexpected. And with this show, I just wanted to make it very personal. And I'll never forget one message where people were driving home back up to their house in Dunfermline. You travel over the Forth Road Bridge, which you mentioned already earlier, so people can see the bridge online. But they were driving across and they saw someone standing on the edge of the bridge, and usually they would just have ignored it. But then they thought, wait, is that person okay? They got to the end of the bridge, parked their car, walked back, and spoke to the person, and that person was going to jump off the bridge that night and end their life. And thankfully, those people managed to talk that person down. And no, full credit to them. They're the ones who did that. So amazing that they did that. But they said, had my show not touched on those subjects, they never would have put themselves in the perspective of that person to go do that. So to see that it had that sort of impact for people was just beautiful, really beautiful that it could do that for individuals. And that show, I only did it for 5 nights, and amazingly ended up winning the Broadway Baby Critics' Choice Award for my show because of the impact again that it was having for people. So I feel like I learned that show was all one show around one message. This show, it's more looking at our perspective on a number of different topics and how our perspective on those things impacts our reality and our relationships and our time that we have here. So instead of it being one long theme, every routine is now a different sort of vignette with the backbone of the consequences of how we interpret things, the impact and implications that will have for us. But I feel like in Edinburgh, I have the ability and the awareness from the audience where I can tell that story and do those things. Whereas Vegas, I feel like it's a very different marketplace where people are coming, certainly for the first hour of the show, to just be entertained, to have an amazing experience because they're in Vegas to gamble, drink, party, go see a topless show. And in the afternoon, they've decided, you know what, let's go see a magician as well. So they just want to be amazed. And I don't feel that's the time and place to be diving into like mental health matters, right? So with Edinburgh, I always look to give it more than just magic for the sake of magic. Whereas Vegas, I'm looking at doing literally, and again, not to be arrogant, but I want to have the best mentalism show in the world. That is the goal. Again, if it's not the goal, why are you wasting your time and their time? That should be everyone's goal, not just mine. But I want to, for the first hour, have the best experience with them. Then towards the end, open up and be a little more personal and share with them and be like, listen, I'm grateful you're here. And, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to say yet, but I'll have that moment where I really connect with them and be authentic. Because I think so often in magic, we're trying to connect with people through lies and deception. That to at least share a moment of truth and honesty is a beautiful thing. So before I get to then like the ending of the show, which is designed to leave everyone on a euphoric high of how did he do all of that? How did that all connect? I still want to have that moment of authenticity. But that's the sort of way that I differentiate the two shows. I will be honest and say that I've now spoken for so long, I forget what your exact question was, but I am very much hoping that was in some way, shape, or form a respectable answer.
It certainly was. It was more than a respectable answer.
Okay, good.
Colin, this is my last question for you, my friend.
Okay.
What's the one piece of advice that has served you well that you'd want everyone else to hear?
I mean, I think I said it earlier, which is don't be a dick, right? Just don't be a dick. The other thing I said, I'm going to just paraphrase a bunch of things. I'll think of something new to put a cherry on top. I also said, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. I think the quicker you can rid yourself of any sort of ego, the happier you're going to be, the more you're going to enjoy this. And I think, as much as it's great to have goals in this world, 10 years ago, I sat down and said, right, I want to be in the Illusionists and I want to be at the front of the poster. I want to do the Royal Variety performance. I want to live in America. And I mean, it's like careful what you wish for, right? Because I've now done those things and I'm delighted I've done them. My favorite show of all time was the Royal Variety performance because it was in the London Palladium, which I'd always wanted to perform there. It was for Prince William, Kate Middleton, who, as far as royals go, I really like those two. And my parents got to come and see that show. And the fact that my parents were in the room to see that all that hard work and me saying I'm not going to do anything with that forensic degree, it like totally paid off, right? But I think having had those goals meant I was constantly working to achieve them and get them. What has been so great about the Vegas residency, like my own solo show here, is that it's happened over the last year that's been getting worked on. And I think the other things happened ultimately quite fast. Like I was in the Illusionist and I was at the front of the poster and I do live in America. Whereas with this, I was able to stop, remind myself that by having these goals, sometimes you forget to enjoy the journey as well. And I think now I'm way more present and able to, like even this podcast, like you and I were going to do this a while ago, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to then talk about the Vegas show, and I knew that I'd be holding back. And when I do these things now, I want to try and be real. I want to be present. I want to try and give you everything I can. And that was why, with love, I put this off for so long so that I could be fully open with you and chat about all this stuff, because I am now trying to really learn to be present and enjoy all this stuff as well. Like love being able to chat to you about this and be honored that you'd want my time and take your time to do this and share this with everyone listening. But yeah, I think the biggest advice is, definitely have the things that you want to achieve, but enjoy and savor every step of the journey of getting there as well. Because if you really focus on these things and work out a way of doing them differently to everyone else, I guarantee if I can do it, anyone can do it. These things are achievable if you're driven, if you're passionate, if you want it enough, if you listen to the right people, if you take constructive criticism from the right people and you work on those things, you are gonna, as Steve Martin said, be so good that they cannot ignore you. And before you know it, you will be where you wanted to be. So just make sure that you are ultimately, again, taking stock of every step of that journey as well.
That is so wonderful. Colin, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely wonderful time and a huge honor, and best luck and best wishes to you in Vegas and in Edinburgh and the rest of your career, my friend.
Same to you. Much love. Thank you.
What an incredible conversation. I hope we all take Colin's advice to heart. Take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And of course, don't be a dick. Thank you so much, Colin Cloud, for spending time with us today. My friends, be sure to watch this guy in action. Your minds will be blown. Visit his website, colincloud.com, and follow Colin on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and TikTok. And of course, thanks to all of you, my friends, for sharing your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you all remember how special each and every one of you are. See you next time on Improv and Magic.